I've said this many times and I'm gonna keep saying it. The Souls games have some of the best bosses in gaming history, and a lot of them happens to be really hard. You got guys like Ishian, Gale, Mesmer, Maria, Soul of Cinder, Gearman, and the list goes on. But despite the games having a lot of challenging but well respected boss encounters, there's some of them that stood out for the wrong reasons, and this made me want to go over a couple of the most controversial and challenging bosses that are infamous within the Souls community. If you like videos like this, then be sure to like and subscribe, and if you don't, then honestly that's fine by me. Anyways, let's go over the first infamous boss that stood out to me. Playing through Dark Souls for the first time, going through all the brutal challenges and slowly making your way through Lordaeron was a great experience. The bosses were tough, but they were all fair in their own way. Some were frustrating, but once you learned their patterns, they became manageable. Then I reached a certain fight that changed everything. A boss that didn't just test my skill but tested my patience as well, and a lot of people can definitely agree with me on this one. That boss is none other than... Before we get into why this fight is so hated, let's first talk about the lore behind it, because for all its flaws as a boss, the story surrounding the Bed of Chaos is actually really interesting. The Bed of Chaos is a source of all chaos and demons in Dark Souls. When the Witch of Izalith tried to recreate the first flame using her own magic, it backfired horribly. Instead of restoring the flame, she gave birth to twisted, unstable mass of chaos. This event created demons and corrupted the entire region. The witch herself was consumed by this, transforming into the Bed of Chaos. Her daughters suffered similar fates, either turning into demons or being forever linked to the disaster she caused. Now while the lore is interesting, that's where the positive ends, because the actual boss fight itself is one of the most bullshit experience in the entire Souls series. When there is a boss topic, a lot of people are usually divided and have different opinions on that particular boss. But the Bed of Chaos is one of the only times I see people actually agreeing with each other on how terrible the fight is. At first, the Bed of Chaos doesn't seem too bad. It's a massive tree-like being with flaming roots, and the goal is to destroy glowing orbs on each side. Seems easy enough, right? But once you start attacking the orbs, that's where the real nightmare begins. The floor starts to crumble beneath you, the boss gains massive sweeping attacks that are almost impossible to dodge consistently, and worst of all, it doesn't play by the usual Souls rules. Instead of a normal fight, it becomes a frustrating platforming section, forcing you to run across the narrow pathways while dodging unpredictable attacks. And if you die, well, good luck, cause it's gonna take you half a year just to get back to it. Now, as I said earlier, when it comes on to difficult FromSoft bosses, the community is usually divided. Some people love the challenge and others hate it. But with the Bed of Chaos, it was almost universally despised. Players weren't complaining that it was too hard. They were just complaining that it was just, fucking terrible. Unlike bosses like Ornstein and Smo or Oratorius, where the challenge comes from skill-based combat, the Bed of Chaos is just mentally exhausting to fight due to the trial and error and pure luck aspect you need for it. The fight was so poorly received that many people believe that FromSoft ran out of time and rushed it, and honestly, it makes sense. Compared to the other bosses in the game, the Bed of Chaos feels unfinished. There's no real depth to the fight. Just destroy 2 weak points, make a lucky jump, and that's it. This is a massive contrast to every other Lord boss in the game, all of whom have much more engaging and well-designed fights. Looking back, the Bed of Chaos is one of the few moments in Dark Souls where the game just feels straight up unfair. It's not a test of skill, it's just a test of patience. Even after all these years, it remains as one of the most criticized bosses in the series, and that's for a good reason. And yet, despite all the hate, the Bed of Chaos has cemented itself as one of the most infamous bosses in Souls history. I remember seeing the gameplay trailer for Elden Ring for the first time and immediately knew that Malenia wasn't going to be an easy boss, by any means. I mean, she was the main poster girl for the entire base game, and knowing this made a lot of people, including myself, super excited to fight her. Now, on my very first playthrough of the game, it seemed like hours went by. There were new people online popping up claiming that a new certain boss was difficult, and many of those people would get replies either agreeing or disagreeing with them. However, on my third day playing the game, there was a boss that a lot of people kept mentioning, but this time most of the comments seemed to agree with them. Fortunately, I wasn't spoiled by these posts, but the boss people were hyping up was none other than
Malenia, Blade of Mikola.
Before I get into her boss fight, let's first talk about the other aspect I find interesting about her, and that's her backstory. Malenia is one of the most powerful and tragic characters in Elden Ring. She's the daughter of Queen Marika and Radagon, making her a demigod. However, from birth, she was cursed with the scarlet rot, a terrible disease that slowly eats away at her body. Despite this, Melina became one of the strongest warriors in the lands between, known for her incredible swordsmanship. Melina was not alone in her struggles. She had a twin brother, Miquella, who was also cursed, though in a different way. While Melina suffered from decay, Miquella was cursed to remain young forever. The two were extremely close, and Melina swore to protect Miquella no matter what. Miquella in turn tried to find a way to cure her of the scarlet rot. He created the Halig tree, a sacred place meant to be a refuge for those rejected by the Golden Order. There he hoped to grow strong enough to break their curses. Later on, due to Miquella's order, Melina fought in a massive war against General Radahn, another demigod, and her other half-brother. Radahn was one of the greatest warriors in history, and their battle was insane. However, even though Melina was incredibly skilled, she could not fully control the scarlet rot inside her. When she was on the verge of defeat, she unleashed it, spreading rot across the battlefield and leaving Radahn in a mindless zombie-like state. After this, Melina returned to the Halig tree, where she remained until the Tarnished arrived. By this point, she was waiting in solitude, still loyal to her missing brother. And now, since we know a little bit more about her backstory, let's talk about the actual fight itself.
Heed my words. I am Melania, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
This is definitely one of the most iconic video game moments ever, and it's definitely my top 10 for sure. One thing FromSoft really does well is boss presentation. All of their bosses really stand out due to how unnervingly quiet and calm everything is around them. There's no distraction or other characters talking. It's like a play and the boss is getting their moment to shine, and that's what I really like. Melina does the same here, as she's sleeping and then gets up and immediately knows we're an intruder and goes on to do a cool short monologue, basically just aura farming the whole time. Again, this is an amazing introduction. The fight starts with Melania immediately rushing towards the player. This lets you know from the jump that you're not going to have an easy time. During the fight, you'll realize a couple of things about her. She's aggressive but also know when to chill out. You'll also realize that her hyper armor can be a bit confusing, as sometimes you can stun her and other times she'll just power through the attacks like Iron Man. Her damage is super high, she can self heal, but the most infamous part of her boss fight is this attack. This attack is definitely up there as one of the most infamous boss moves in gaming history. Shit had motherfuckers praying and hoping that FromSoft would patch it. I swear, you couldn't drink water or hear the word without getting flashbacks. The waterfowl dance isn't one of those moves that's high damaging but easily dodged or telegraphed. Nah. This move was hard hitting, as it could one shot you, and also dodging it is like doing a mini game. Motherfuckers had to do a sequence of movements like they're entering a cheat code or something. What's worse is that the attack could come out of nowhere. She could be dancing with you and then boom, she flies into the air and slices you up like cheese. This move was so bad that majority of the community spoke up against it, wanting it to get patched, and what did FromSoft do? They laughed and acted like nothing ever happened. Yeah, that move wasn't just some miss overtune by the devs. No, they deadass made it like that on purpose. So the community had to come together and share ways on how to dodge this insane attack. Many YouTube guys were made due to this move, and it's not like these were random videos getting small amounts of views. These videos got hundreds of thousands. That goes to show how everyone felt about this attack. Anyways, most players eventually overcame this move, and after that was done, the first phase became much easier. But job's not done, because this is where the real fight begins.
Wait.
This cutscene is one of my favorites because of how the music changes and how different she looks now. In this state, Melania embraces the rot and becomes the goddess of, well, rot. Her moveset remains the same throughout this phase, with the exception of a couple new attacks. She's also more aggressive, so good luck healing. This phase is also where a lot of people struggle too, as the Scarlet Rot attacks can rapidly deplete your health. But after defeating her, you get her final words.
Your strength, extraordinary. The mark of a true lord.
Man, this fight was insanely tough, but again, like most hard FromSoft fights, the reception to her was a bit split at first. However, as time goes by and people start figuring out different ways to counter her, she became more favorable. A lot of the complaints that Melania had was again with the waterfowl dance. A lot of people thought this move should have been more easy to dodge, or she should have gave more time for the players to react to it, but many knew that beneath that, the fight itself was actually good. Again, this fight was so notoriously difficult that it literally made some people's online career, and to this day she still remains the most popular Souls boss ever due to said notoriety. Which is crazy because there's another boss in the game that was way harder and garnered a lot of hate in the beginning as well. Man, when Shadow of the Erdtree first got announced, I was excited as hell. I mean, I couldn't control my hype at all, and many other people were excited as well. And the crazy part is, it was just based off this single image. When this image first dropped, a lot of fans started making breakdowns of what it could mean story-wise. Again, the hype was real. Then we went a whole year without hearing shit. But finally, February 21st, we saw the official gameplay trailer, and man, the hype was reignited. This time we actually got to see what the DLC would look like, and again, the excitement was through the roof. A couple days before the DLC dropped, there were talks about a particular boss that was insanely hard. So hard to the fact that many people considered Melania a pushover compared to it. Some of the most experienced players said that they spent a couple hours on it. And this made a lot of people more eager to fight it to see for themselves. Mind you, at this point Melania was considered the hardest boss within the Souls community, so this was a crazy statement. Now when the DLC dropped, to no one's surprise it was brutal. The bosses were crazy and some of the regular enemies could one or two shot you. But to be fair though, that was expected since some people weren't using any Shadow Tree fragments. But there was a boss that most people, even with max Shadow Tree blessing, agreed that it's painfully hard. So I guess the rumors were true, so I had to see and experience this for myself. And I got to the point near the Divine Gate and immediately knew something was up. And as I walked through the gate, I was shocked to see who it was. This man, General Radahn, is back and in his prime. Now surprisingly, there were a lot of mixed reaction to this. Some people were happy they finally get to fight Prime Radahn, while others wished that they got a new original boss instead. Personally, I was a bit in between. Again, I really like the fact that we got to face a stronger, cooler version of Radahn since it's something that me and a lot of people wanted, but for an actual final boss, I wish we got something more, if you know what I mean. Now enough yapping about history and let's talk about why this boss was considered controversial within the community. You see, while Promised Consort was good presentation wise, in terms of the actual fight itself, he wasn't that great, and it was mostly because of a few factors holding him back. He was super tanky, his cross slash attack was annoying to dodge, his weapon hitbox was insanely huge, he barely had any openings, his attacks hit like missiles, and the second phase had its own additional set of issues. And it's the part where a lot of people wanted the devs to fix the most. I mean, first of all, the light beams made it hard to see properly. He also had a few attacks like his light nuke that required you to start running immediately after seeing him levitate. So let's say he hits you and immediately does that move, you're pretty much going to take damage. And the constant light beams after every attack was a bit overwhelming.
I'm just going to come right out and say it. I think the Promised Consort Radahn fight at the end of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC is a bad fight. But maybe not for the reasons you might think.
But I'm about to complain about him for the next 5 minutes, so the video is just trying to explain why I think he could have been done so much better.
With a fun moveset holding callbacks to the original design in a few of the body of Moog he inhabits. That is the extent of my praise, and it's the only thing that saves him from F tier.
Now this drove the fans mad. Most people wanted the devs to fix him and said that he was broken and that he felt way too overtuned, especially compared to the player, who's not as fast. But a minor group of fans actually disagreed. They thought that Radahn was perfectly balanced and that people just need to fix or change their builds in order to challenge him the right way. Now personally, I disagreed with that statement, as if that was the case, then being able to reallocate your stats would be completely free and not something you could do only a limited amount of times. But anyways, as you can see, a lot of people were pissed about this, even more so than how they were for Melania. At least with her, it was only one attack that made the fight super challenging, but with Radahn, it was a lot of factors. Fortunately for most people, he was nerfed a month or two later, and the reception to this was good for the most part. Now, there were some people here and there saying that he shouldn't have been patched, or that they went overboard with it. Personally, I think that the nerf they did finally balanced him out as a challenging but fair boss, and not just hard for the sake of being hard. So yeah, in conclusion, this man is probably the second most infamous boss in FromSoft history, and he was talked about so much to the point where he was nerfed. Also, funny thing about that, his base game counterpart was also nerfed, so I don't know, that was kind of funny. Those bosses were the ones that stood out to me the most when it comes down to infamy. If you thought that another boss should have been on the list, then feel free to comment below. And please remember to keep it respectful. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good one.